Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We are discussing today brachial plexus. Our objectives are to know the formation, root value of brachial plexus, understand the relations of brachial plexus, know the divisions, chords and branches of brachial plexus, understand the mechanism of injury to the brachial plexus, and list the clinical features. So we start with the formation of spinal nerve. In foundation block, you have taken a lecture of introduction to nervous system and you already talked about it. This diagram is showing the brain, and from brain the downward extension is the spinal cord. And inside the spinal cord we have two types of matter, gray matter and white matter, through which the nerves are coming out. So in this section we will see that in next slide. So before we move to the next slide, what we will see that there are total 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and they are named according to the regions they are present. Like we have 8 cervical nerves, they are present in the neck region, so they named as cervical nerves. There are 8 pairs. There are 12 pairs of thoracic nerves because these nerves are emerging at the level of the thorax. Then 5 lumbar nerves in the lumbar region and 5 sacral and 1 coccygeal to the corresponding regions. So it means that we have total 31 pairs of spinal nerves which are coming out of the spinal cord, with 8 cervical and 12 thoracic. And we are concerned with the nerves here. So before we talk about brachial plexus, we will just see how a spinal nerve is emerging out of the vertebral column. So this is a diagram which is showing a spinal nerve coming out of the spinal cord and the vertebral opening. So this is the vertebra. This is a transverse section of the vertebral column, and it's showing the spinal cord inside. And if we can see inside spinal cord section, we see two types of matter: white matter, the light color, and almost in the periphery, and this H shape is known as gray matter because it appears gray, so it's named as gray matter. It is a H-shaped structure. So when we know the position of the body, this is the vertebral body, and on the other side we have spine. So this is the anterior part of the vertebral column, or the vertebral body is lying anterior to the body. So this portion of the spinal cord will be the anterior portion, and this portion will be the posterior. So this is the anterior part of spinal cord, or anterior surface of the spinal cord, and this will be the posterior surface. So from the anterior part, this projection of that H-shaped gray matter is known as anterior horn of spinal cord, and this projection backward is known as posterior horn. So we have anterior horns on both the sides, and we have posterior horns on both the sides. Fibers of the nerve which are emerging out, they are named as rootlets. Many rootlets for the single nerve, and they all come together and unite together and move forward. So those fibers which are coming out of the anterior horn of the spinal cord, gray matter, that is known as motor fibers. These are the motor fibers for the motor activity of the body. And those fibers which are going towards the posterior horn, because they are the sensory fibers, they are taking information from the different receptors of the body to the spinal cord, so they are coming back to the spinal cord and they enter through the posterior root. So it means that anterior root of the spinal cord is motor in function, and posterior root of spinal cord is sensory in function. So these both roots, they unite together and then they form a spinal nerve. And before they form, in the posterior root or the sensory root, we have a ganglion present there, which is known as dorsal root ganglion. and this is the sensory. They both unite together as sensory and motor from the spinal nerve. So a single spinal nerve is formed by the motor root from the anterior horn and from the sensory root from the posterior horn. These both roots unite together just at the level of the intervertebral foramen, and they form a nerve which is known as spinal nerve. That means that a spinal nerve is a mixed type of nerve containing motor fibers as well as containing sensory fibers. So this mixed nerve, as it emerges out of the intervertebral foramen, it again divides into two rami or two projections. The term ramus means arm-like projection. So division. So the spinal nerve, or each spinal nerve, divides into two rami: dorsal ramus and ventral ramus, or anterior ramus or posterior ramus, or it is also known as dorsal division of a spinal nerve and ventral division of spinal nerve. So if you come across the word ramus or division, they are same, meaning posterior division and anterior division, or posterior ramus or anterior ramus, they are same. So again we will repeat that motor root is coming from the anterior horn, sensory root is going towards the posterior horn. The both roots unite together to form the spinal nerve. The spinal nerve, after formation, having both sensory and motor root, again divides into a dorsal division and a ventral division containing sensory fibers as well as motor fibers. So what we are going to discuss, the brachial plexus. The all the plexus in the body are formed by the ventral rami of spinal nerve. Remember, this is a very important point, that all the plexus, the cervical plexus in the neck, the brachial plexus in the axilla or part of the neck, the lumbosacral plexus in the lumbosacral region, these all plexuses are formed from the ventral rami of spinal nerve, which are coming from here. So now you can easily appreciate that what is the origin of the plexuses. Now the brachial plexus, as the name is indicating, brachial word came from the term brachium, and brachium means arm. So the main supply to this plexus is going towards the arm, so named as brachial plexus. And plexus means a network or a meshwork of nerve. So brachial plexus is a network of nerves which are emerging out from the spinal cord and then moving forward and giving branches to the different muscles of the body that we are going to discuss. So the location of the brachial plexus, it starts in the neck and then through the roots, which we are going to discuss, and from the roots it becomes, form trunks, and from trunks to division and division to cords. So from neck it arises and passes behind this bone which is known as clavicle, and then from clavicle it moves towards the axilla, and from axilla it passes to the arm. So that is the direction of brachial plexus, starting from neck, passing through or below the clavicle and entering into axilla, and from axilla reaching to the arm. And here you can see the artery that is known as axillary artery, have a relation with it, and we are discussing later also with the axillary vein. So here we can see the roots are coming from the neck, and as the roots emerging out, they form trunks. How the trunks are formed, that we will discuss. The trunks lie in the neck. This area is having a triangle of the neck known as posterior triangle of the neck. So they lie on the posterior triangle. So roots in the neck, trunks in the posterior triangle, and then below it passes and gives divisions from the trunks below the clavicle, and then the cords are formed in the axilla, and then the final terminal branches of the plexus are formed in the arm. So that is the position and relation of the brachial plexus, that roots in the neck, trunks in the posterior triangle. Over here we have a muscle which are known as scalenus muscles, known as scalenus anterior, and also a muscle which is below that, scalenus medius. So the roots are emerging out between the scalenus medius and scalenus anterior muscles. And as they emerge out, they lie on the posterior triangle, then they pass below the clavicle, and then move to the axilla and to the arm. So here the question, a very important question arises, that why the plexuses are formed in the body. Now, the roots which are coming out from here, they all are carrying different type of fibers. Some are carrying fibers for the flexor muscles and some are taking fibers for the extensor muscles. So as they come and join in the network, so they redistribute their fibers, and once the final terminal branches are coming out, the nerve, a single nerve mostly carrying flexor fibers, the other nerve is carrying extensor fibers. So it means that distribution of the flexor and extensor fibers are taking place in the plexus, or in other words we can say segregation of flexor and extensor fibers takes place in the plexus. That's why plexuses are formed. Why? Because here every spinal nerve, what we have discussed, contains motor and sensitive fibers together, but here some of the fibers of the same nerve contain fibers for the flexor nerve or flexor muscles, and some takes fiber for the extensor muscles. So here there are mixed type of fiber, flexor and extensors in the same nerve. But when they form in the plexus and the terminal branches of plexus, when they go out, the nerve individually carry either fiber for the flexor muscles or the fiber for the extensor muscles. That later on we also discuss. So now we can see, so the first question about the brachial plexus, the how or from where the brachial plexus is coming. Already we have seen previously that we have 8 cervical nerves and 12 thoracic nerves. So C5, C6, C7, C8. These are the 4 cervical nerves which are giving their branches to the formation of brachial plexus, and fibers from the T1 also. So first thoracic nerve and 4 cervical nerves or lower 4 cervical nerves, they are forming the brachial plexus. So they are known as root of the brachial plexus. What it is known as? Root of the brachial plexus, and the root value will be C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1. So these are the nerves which are forming the brachial plexus. So that is important to understand. First of all, the roots of the brachial plexus are C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1. And from where they are coming, we have discussed, they are coming from the anterior rami or anterior divisions of the spinal nerve. Initially, the second picture we have discussed this point, that every spinal nerve divides into two, anterior and posterior divisions. So what we are looking here, these are the anterior rami or anterior divisions of these spinal nerves. So they come out. As they come out, C5 and C6 roots unite together and they form a trunk. Trunk means a much thicker than the two nerves. So this thicker portion is known as superior trunk. C5 and C6 roots unite together and they form superior trunk. C7 continuous as middle trunk. It is not uniting with any other branch. It's just going forward and becoming the middle trunk. And C8 and T1, the lower nerve, they unite together and they form the inferior trunk. So out of 5 roots, 3 trunks are formed: superior trunk, middle trunk and inferior trunk. C5 and C6 will be the root value for the superior trunk, C7 for the middle and C8 and T1 for the inferior trunk. So roots now become trunks: superior, middle and inferior. Now after that, each trunk divides into two divisions: anterior division and posterior division. Also the middle trunk, anterior division and posterior division. Also the inferior as anterior division and posterior division. So it means that each trunk is dividing into in the anterior and posterior divisions. So these are known as divisions of the brachial plexus. Now the anterior division of the superior trunk and anterior division of the middle trunk, they unite to form the lateral cord. The posterior divisions of the superior, middle and inferior, all the trunk's posterior divisions unite together and they form posterior cord. And anterior division alone itself form the medial cord of brachial plexus. And then after the formation of cords, finally the terminal branches will arise from them. So this is the diagrammatic pathway of brachial plexus, starting from the roots C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1. C5 and C6 unite together to form superior trunk. C7 continues as middle trunk. C8 and T1 unite together to form inferior trunk. Every trunk divisible into two divisions, anterior and posterior. The anterior divisions of superior and middle trunk unite to form lateral cord. The anterior division of inferior trunk continues as medial cord, and all the posterior divisions of the three cords unite together, trunks unite together to form the posterior cord. And these cords finally give branches, which are the terminal branches of the brachial plexus, which are going to supply. So roots are in the neck, trunk is in the posterior triangle, divisions below the clavicle, cords in the axilla, and terminal branches are going towards the arm and even the forearm and hand to supply the upper limb. Also another point which is important is that what we have discussed, that why plexuses are formed. This C5 and D6, they are carrying fibers for the flexor muscles as well as some fibers for the extensors. So when they move here, what is happening, the segregation or the separation of these flexor extensors are taking place, and now the musculocutaneous nerve, which is the branch of lateral cord, when it moves forward, it will carry only flexor fibers to supply the anterior compartment of arm muscles. So it is a flexor muscle now, but here the fibers can carry flexor and extensor. That is the main reason the plexus are formed. That after the complete formation of the plexus and the final terminal branches, either they carry flexor fibers or they carry extensor fibers for the corresponding muscles. So roots C5, C6, C7, C8, T1, cords superior, middle, inferior, divisions anterior and posterior cord, trunks, cords lateral, posterior and medial. Now the branches of the spinal the brachial plexus, there are two nerves which are emerging from the roots. Only two nerves are emerging from the roots. Dorsal scapular nerve, as you can see, it is arising from C5. Dorsal scapular nerve arising from C5. And the other nerve, which is known as long thoracic nerve, also known as nerve to thoracic anterior muscle, serratus anterior muscle, C5, C6 and C7. You can see C5, C6 and C7, the three nerves are giving branches, and then a single nerve is going to form a nerve which is known as long thoracic nerve or nerve to serratus anterior muscle. So two nerves are arising from the roots, dorsal scapular nerve and long thoracic. For the trunks, only the superior or upper trunk gives branches. Middle and inferior or lower trunks are not giving any branches in the brachial plexus. Only the upper trunk are giving two branches. One is known as suprascapular nerve and other is known as this one, nerve to subclavius. So two nerves are emerging from the upper or superior trunk. Then there are no branches from the division or cords. From the divisions. From the cords, when they form, the lateral cord gives three branches: lateral pectoral nerve, musculocutaneous nerve, and lateral root of a nerve which is known as median nerve. So there is a nerve which is formed in the arm known as median nerve. It is formed by two roots, a lateral root and a medial root. So lateral cord is responsible for the three branches: lateral pectoral nerve, musculocutaneous nerve, and lateral root of median nerve. Medial cord gives five branches: medial pectoral nerve, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm. This is medial pectoral brachial. Brachial, as I have told you, brachial means arm, and the term antebrachium is forearm. So this is known as medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, or medial brachial cutaneous, and medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm, or medial antebrachial cutaneous nerve. So these are the three nerves. The fourth nerve is the medial root of median nerve, and the fifth is ulnar nerve. So these are the five branches of medial cord: medial pectoral nerve, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm, ulnar nerve, and medial root of median nerve. These are the five terminal branches of medial cord. For the posterior cord, we have branches. These stars are given the name as upper and lower subscapular nerves. Two. The third is thoracodorsal nerve. This one. Then the fourth is axillary, and fifth is radial. So these are the five branches of posterior cord: upper and lower subscapular, thoracodorsal, axillary, and radial. These all are the branches of brachial plexus. Again, we will repeat this. Roots for two branches: dorsal scapular and long thoracic. Upper trunk only gives two branches: suprascapular and longitudinous. Lateral cord gives three branches: lateral pectoral, musculocutaneous, and lateral root of median. Medial cord gives five branches: median root of median nerve, ulnar nerve, and medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, and medial pectoral nerve. Posterior cord gives five branches: upper and lower subscapular nerves, axillary nerve, radial nerve, and the thoracodorsal. So these are the branches of brachial plexus. These are terminal branches. Now the relation, once again we will repeat them. Roots between the scalene setae and medius muscle, trunks in the posterior triangle of the neck, divisions below the clavicle, cords are formed in the axilla, and then the remaining from the branches are going towards the arm. And here you can also appreciate the roots emerging out of the vertebral column. Only the anterior divisions, the C5 C6 form superior cord, C7 as middle, C8 T1 as inferior. Everyone dividing into two roots. Anterior divisions of superior and middle form lateral cord. Posterior divisions of all the cords are formed posterior cord, and anterior division of inferior will form the medial cord. And then they are given their terminal branches, which we are discussed in detail. And every branch has their root value. That C5, C6, and C7 means that musculocutaneous nerves are receiving fibers from these cervical nerves. Axillary nerve is receiving from C5 and C6. The same way, medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm are receiving sensory fibers from C8 and T. So these are known as root values of the nerves, which are important for you, and you have to memorize them. This diagram is showing the relation of axillary artery to the brachial plexus. Initially, you will talk about later brachial axillary artery. Axillary artery has three divisions. This is the first part. This is the muscle which is known as pectoralis minor. So that part of the axillary artery which is passing below the pectoralis minor is known as second part of axillary artery, and that part which is passing out from the pectoralis minor onwards, that will be the third part of axillary artery. So these are the three parts. So the first part is lie below the brachial plexus. The second part lie between the or enter into the cords, and the third part lie between the branches of the brachial plexus. So it is a very important relation of the axillary artery with the brachial plexus, that first part is below the plexus, second part between the cords, and third part is exactly between the cords and branches of the brachial plexus. So they have an important relation as compared to the axillary vein, which is a little bit away from it. So why it is important? Because if any surgery is required for the axillary artery or for even the cords or branches of the axillary brachial plexus, you have to be careful for this relation. Now there are two terms, diagram is showing only one term, but there are two terms we commonly use. One is known as prefixed brachial plexus and other is known as postfixed brachial plexus. So what happens sometimes, if there is a rudimentary first thoracic rib with postfixed brachial plexus, that if you see here, normally we have said that the brachial plexus roots are C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1. That this is the normal roots of brachial plexus or root value of brachial plexus. But sometimes what happens, that if the normally what happens, the first rib is attached to the first thoracic vertebrae, but in some cases what happens, that first rib is attached to not to the first thoracic vertebra, but it attached higher up to the 7 cervical vertebra. So it is an abnormal condition in which, or variation in which, the first rib is little bit ahead of it. So what happened, the roots which are coming out of the brachial plexus, now the C6, C7, C8, T1 and T2, these roots are giving fibers to the brachial plexus. So this type of plexus are known as postfixed brachial plexus. It is a variation, it is not a normal condition. In maximum more than 95% of people, the root value are that the brachial plexus arising from C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1, but in some people, they are, because of the abnormal attachment of the rib higher up to the 7th cervical, the one root is descend down, and now the root which are coming out is not starting from C5 but starting from C6, and not ending to T1 but ending to T2. So it means a spinal nerve which is ahead to the roots are attached, so that's why it is known as postfixed brachial plexus. And the prefix means that there will be no T1, but in place of T1 there will be C4 now. So C4, C5, C6, C7, C8, that will be the root value of the prefixed brachial plexus. So here what happened, that in place of T1, the fibers going to the brachial plexus, the fiber from C4 went to the brachial plexus. So we name them as prefixed brachial plexus, and if it started from C6 to T2, we will name it as postfixed brachial plexus. And the normal is C5 to T1. Now we will talk about little bit about the brachial plexus injuries. You have a tutorial also, you will discuss in detail. So brachial plexus injuries can occur in adults and mostly occurs in infants during difficult delivery. And in adults, due to sports most commonly associated like football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, wrestling and gymnastics. And nerve injuries can result from blunt force trauma, poor posture or chronic repetitive stress. These all factors can cause injury to the brachial plexus, either inherent to games or direct trauma or repetitive pressure on the nerves. So, patient generally present with pain and muscle weakness, and some patient may experience muscle atrophy or loss of the muscle mass because of the damage to the brachial plexus. What will be the result of brachial plexus injuries? There will be anesthesia as the sensory nerves are involved. So sensation will be lost. There will be no sensation, that is known as anesthesia. Or maybe the muscle will not perform its function. There will be motor loss known as paralysis. So it can be complete paralysis or it can be incomplete depending upon how much plexus is damaged. If the main nerve is damaged, they can be caused complete paralysis. If it is partial, then we name it as incomplete. That some of the part of the 50%, 60% of the muscle fibers are working, so then it will be known as incomplete paralysis. So there are two mainly injuries which occurs in brachial plexus: Erb's Duchenne palsy, or commonly known as Erb palsy. It occurs when it involves the superior part of brachial plexus. So if injury to the superior part of brachial plexus, that is the upper trunk, is involved, then this palsy occurs, which is known as Erb Duchenne palsy or Erb palsy. Why it occurs? Due to excessive increase in the angle between the neck and the shoulder. So any movement which causes increase in the angle between our neck and shoulder can stretches the brachial plexus and can cause injury to the brachial plexus. The roots which are involved in palsy, as we have discussed, because it is involving the superior part or upper trunk. So C5 and C6 are the roots which are mainly involved in this damage. The rest of the plexus is okay, but these roots are involved, and the muscles of the shoulder and arm are involved in this damage. So here you can see the baby is coming out at the time of delivery. So if you are removing the baby, an excessive increase in this angle occurs between the neck and the head, shoulder. It can stretch the brachial plexus and tear the upper trunk. Here you can also see shoulder dystocia, in which the shoulder and head is almost in the same angle because of the overstretch. So the nerve will be tear off. This is also the picture showing the overstretching of the shoulder while the time of delivery. Another diagram showing damage to the shoulder. Another uh, form in which the baby can get injured their brachial plexus is vacuum extractor delivery. When you put an vacuum extractor to the head of the baby, if there is difficult delivery and taking it out by the pressure, it can cause a pulse palsy. And also the forceps delivery, that you are putting forceps around the head and stretching it out. So while you are stretching them out, you can injure their baby's brachial plexus by overstretching between the shoulder and the neck. For the adults, like we have discussed the play, that if someone is playing and falling on the shoulder can increase this angle and cause a palsy. Also you can see a direct blow on the ground and you are landing on the shoulder while stretching your head. So this angle is increased, so it can stretch your muscles over the region, and your C5 and C6 or upper trunk of epiglottis can be stretched out and teared off or injured. This is another diagram, a direct blow to the brachial plexus by excessive stretching of the neck. Also the same overstretching of the shoulder while, and here if you put a direct, or even there is a no direct blow but there is a direct blow on the shoulder, it can cause injury to the brachial plexus. So at the end we understand that brachial plexus is mainly injured due to the stretch type of an injury, in which overstretching is taking place, or a direct compression injury can cause heart palsy. So the clinical appearance of the baby will be, or the person will be, there will be motor loss as well as there will be sensory loss, because the C5 C6 both contains mixed type of nerves and they contain motor and sensory fibers. So motor loss will occur, shoulder will be adducted, person will or patient will cannot able to abduct the shoulder, medially rotated arm and extended elbow, and the sensory loss will be lateral aspect of the upper limb. Patient can't feel any sensation on the lateral aspect of the upper. So here you can see this is showing damage to the brachial plexus. This is normal brachial plexus. This is sternocleidomastoid muscle of the neck, and here you can see there is a problem with the baby. This is our palsy of the right arm, that because of the overstretching of the muscles of the neck is carrying a contraction of the muscle which is known as sternocleidomastoid, causing head to pull down and to the right, and this condition is known as torticollis. So it also compresses the brachial plexus and cause injury to the C5 and C6 roots known as nerve palsy. So damage will occur to the two roots, that is C5 as well as C6. So it can be due to torticollis, which is the contracture of a muscle of the neck, a very important muscle known as sternocleidomastoid. So the presentation of the baby will be that the hand will be adducted. It is not far away from the body. It is near the body. The whole arm adducted. It is medially rotated, and the elbow is extended. So this is a typical appearance of baby with Erb's palsy. You can see here also adducted shoulder, extended elbow, and medially rotated arm. That is Erb's palsy. The second palsy of the brachial plexus, or second type of injury, is known as clumsy paralysis or palsy. This occurs to the inferior part of brachial plexus, that is C8 and T1. So these roots are involved. So clumsy paralysis occurs to the inferior part of plexus, and why it occurs? Because of extensive or excessive abduction of the arm. It is a less common than injury to the superior part of brachial plexus. So we compare both the injuries. Erb's palsy is common as compared to the clumsy paralysis, but if there is excessive abduction of the arm, it can occur anterior C8 and T1. So motor loss will occur to the small muscles of the hand, because the nerves from C8 and T1, they are mainly supplying the muscles of the hand, and sensory loss will occur to the medial aspect of the upper limb, because the supply from C8 and T1 is not coming toward the medial part of the upper limb. So here you can see a person grasping something to prevent a fall. So if this angle is increased again, so over abduction is taking place, excessive abduction will take place, so it can stretch out C8 and T1. Also, baby's upper limb is pulled excessively during delivery. So if the person is pulling it, or doctor is pulling it harshly, and there will be a more abduction of the shoulder, it can cause trauma. And the result of this will be, as we have discussed, there is a condition which is known as claw hand. The hand will appear like a claw, occur due to the problem or damage to the muscles of the hand which are present and perform the function. So in later classes we will talk about claw hand in detail when we study the muscles of the hand and why this condition occur with the nerve injury, or even with the injury to the C8 and T1 fiber, because they are supplying there. So appearing will the hand will be the shape of a claw. Here you can see this is the normal hand and this is the claw hand. So this baby is suffering from clumsy palsy at the time of birth. And the last is, already we have discussed a cervical rib in the post-fic, that if normally the first rib is attached to the first thoracic vertebra, like you can see here, but what happened in the right side, you can see the first rib is attached higher up, not to the T1 but C7 vertebrae. So that is a abnormal condition or variation in which first rib is attached to the 7th cervical vertebra in place of first thoracic vertebra. So now what happened? Because of the presence of rib higher up, this branches of the vertebral, this brachial plexus are passing in between the ribs now. So if they are passing, especially the inferior part of the plexus passing in between the ribs, so it can cause damage to C18D1 and clunky paralysis can occur in the adult if, due to abnormal union of first hip to the first seven cervical vertebra, the ribs can compress C18D1 and can cause the paralysis. So this is all about the basic process and injury. So for the injuries you will all also talk about in the tutorial. So for the lecture and these things, if you have any question, you can ask me in email.